Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Gimel in Sanhedrin as we learn for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Sunnah Matzav Shivya. Yesterday we left off about 2/3, 3/4 of the way down on the page on Gimel Amud Aleph at the two dots. The Mishnah had said that you use a court of three. Those are the majority of the courts were courts that dealt with money matters and things of that sort. And that was, as the Mishnah described on Daf Beis. And one of them, the first one, the second one mentioned was Didei Mominus. We said yesterday that referred to halvos, to loans. And then Gzelos v'chavolos. Chavolos means damages. When you damage somebody's person, whether it was an animal that damaged your person or a person damaged the person. So then it says nezek v'chatzi nezek. So why does it say nezek? What is nezek? Nezek is the damage that you cause, the devaluation that you cause to the person. We know if a person damages another person, he has to pay five things. Nezek, tsar, ripu, shevis, and boshes. Nezek is devaluation. Tsar is the pain that has to be assessed. Nezek, tsar, ripui, the doctor bills, the hospital bills, whatever. Shevis, time off from work, and boshes, and the shame. All those things have to be assessed and figured out. The first one is nezek, which is his devaluation. How much is he worth less on the market? How much is his today you'd say, what is his future earnings potential? Whatever that would be, that's nezek. So that's one of the chavalos. So isn't it repetitive? You already mentioned that damages, chavalot, are done with the court of three. Then you say nezek and chatzi nezek are also done with the court of three. But that is chavalos. Chavalos includes nezek, which is one of the things one of the five things that you have to pay when you do damage. So what's going on over here? Says the Gemara, nezek chatzi nezek kind of chavalos. You've already said chavalos, so why are you repeating yourself? Because you want to talk about chatzi nezek. Who pays chatzi nezek? Ashore, an animal that damaged for the first three times, he only has to pay half. So that's why you mentioned chatzi nezek, because that's not included in the regular chavalos of damages. So stananami nezek shalom. So since he mentioned chatzi nezek, he mentioned nezek shalom, but chatzi nezek nami hainu chavalos. Chatzi nezek is also damages, still damages. Whether you damage a person or damage property, whatever it is, that's part of chavalos, and that's nezek and chatzi nezek. So tana mamona v'ktani tasa. I'll tell you why. Because one case was where you pay the actual damages. Mamon means you pay what you caused, whatever exact damages that you caused. V'ktani knas and chatzi nezek is only a knas. It's only a knas. What do we mean? Because we had a machlokas, we said, we're going to mention it now in the next line. Famous machlokas we had Baba Kama. When a shore damages for the first time, or any animal that damages for the first three times, he pays chatzi nezek. Is that a fine or is it money? Do we say, look, all animals go out and do damage, but you know what? The first three times we're going to give him a break, and he only has to pay half. He really owes the whole thing, but we'll give him a break for the first three times because it's like you get a ticket. The cop gives you a ticket the first couple of times. He gives you a warning, a ticket. You only have to pay half. Fine. Or do you say no? The truth is that an animal does the first few times. You don't expect him to do damage at all. Normal animals don't do damage, except what? Except we want to encourage you. We want to make sure that you be extra careful. So we give you a fine and you say you have to pay half. Not that the fine, the half that you pay is a break. You really should pay the whole thing, but you don't have to. But we give you a break the first three times. But rather, you shouldn't have to pay anything because it's not. You're not expecting. You don't have to expect that your animal's going to do damage. But the Torah says, you know what? Let's be extra careful. So we'll charge you a knas, and the first few times you have to pay half. So if you say that chavolos and nezek is what is nezek is only mentioned because of chatzi nezek, and chatzi nezek is mentioned because that's a knas. We're talking about a court adjudicates a case of regular damages, mamon, whatever it is. You damage somebody, you got to pay what you damage, and also the case of a knas. So anichel mando or palganis gemara, that's fine. Palganis knas, so that's fine if you hold like that shita, like the second shita says that the reason you pay chatzi nezek when your animal gores the first three times is because it's a knas. Really, you shouldn't have to pay anything. It's just a fine. You shouldn't have to pay anything because you don't have to expect your animal's going to do damage. But it's a fine. We make you pay half. So we talk about. So therefore, the Mishnah is teaching me that when you do damage, you have to pay. That not only you have to pay when you do straight up damages. Not only you have to pay. Not only does the court adjudicate cases of straight up money, but even cases of knas. But if you say that then when you pay half a knas, that's really mammon. You really owe the whole thing, except we give you a break the first 3 times. So that's mammon. It's not a knas, just the opposite. We're giving you a break. You should pay the whole thing. But the first 3 times we give you a break. So they're both cases of mammon where you pay damages. So once you tell me that you pay damages, what does he have to say? Nezek. You say nezek, oh, that's because of chatzi nezek. Chatzi nezek is also mammon. Michael and Maimer. Ela the kabay lemesle tashlim kefil. Oh, because the next one is you pay kefil. When do you pay kefil? If you burgled something and then you were caught by Adam, testified against you, you have to pay kefil. Or tashlim aber chamisha. If after you burgled it, you also sold it or shechted it, you have to pay 4 and 5. That's the mamon she'ena mishtalin baroshu. Even if you say that's a knas, we said what? Palgan mando. That's good if you owe knas. But if you say, what about over here? This is certainly a knas. Kefil and arba v'chamisha is certainly not straight damages. It's mamon she'ena mishtalin bosh, meaning you don't pay the principal. Ena mishtalin bosh means you don't pay the principal. In the case of kefil, you're paying double. In the case of 4 or 5, you're paying 4 or 5. In the case of chatzi nezek, you're paying half. Whenever you don't pay the exact principle, so it's telling you that chiddush. That's why it's dal. That's why it tells you, because you say kefil and dal dehay, which is not a case where you pay the principal. Where do you pay more? Tananami chatzin ezek, the mam shem misham barosha chatzin ezek is also you don't pay the principal, you pay half. Whether you pay more, whether you pay less, you're not paying the principal. So once it says kefil and arba'chlisha, we say chatzin ezek, and once you mention chatzin ezek, whatever it is, even if it's mamon. But it's even if you say chatzin, if it's a knas, we say fine. The reason the Mishnah tells you both cases, it tells you a case of mammon, it tells you cases of knas. Even if you say that chatzin nezek is not knas, it's mammon. You really owe the whole thing, but we give you a break. We give you a break the first time. So you're paying damages. You have to pay half the damages. It's not a fine. You're paying half the damages. So why does he talk about, we already know about damages. The answer is, since you've mentioned kefil and dal where you don't pay the principal, you pay more. We tell you the case also where you pay less than the principal. That's the point here. Yeah.
With the animal, when you're only paying half.
Yeah.
It's also a warning.
Right. It's like a warning. That's right. So it's a warning, guys. So that's the idea. That's the idea of it's a knas. If it's a knas more, we say really you shouldn't pay anything. But we give you a warning, you better pay half to make sure your animal, you should guard it anyway. If you're saying that it's mammon, that means really you pay the whole thing, but we give you a break. We're giving you a break. We're not giving you a warning, just the opposite, we're giving you a break. Now, where do we get the idea that you need a court of 3? What's the court of 3? Who made up 3? Well, we all know a Bezdin 3 people sit there, 3 rabbis. Where do you get that from? So the pasuk says here in Shmos and Mishpatim, in Perek Chapez, it says, listen carefully. I'm going to read it outside. I'm going to read it from the Chumash before we see it in the Gemara. The pasuk says, "Im lo yimase aganaf," in case where you give something to watch and it's stolen. V'nikra balabayis el ho Elohim doesn't mean God's name, it means to the judge. That's one. Then it says in the next pasuk, "I'll call varpesh al shor al chamor al sel salma al kol v'ashemar ki uzeh." We learn out the concept of motive mixas ad Elohim yavad varshneim, until the judge. And then the same pasuk is asher yashirun Elohim. So we find the word Elohim 3 times. That tells me you need court of 3. Elohim is a judge, a person appointed who has authority, who's a learned person. That's how we know 3. Now see it in the Gemara, 4th line on Gimel Amid Beis. Shloshim minom. Pardon?
Did we have these?
Yes, we mentioned them yesterday. We mentioned not all 3. We mentioned that there's 3 psukim, but we didn't. Now we're going into the detail. So Shloshim, where do we get 3 from? The Tanur Rabbanim, Nikar v'alabayis elo Elohim, and that's the first pasuk we just said. And when there's a fight over did he steal it, who stole it, etc., bring it to court. That's one. Harekan echad. That's one judge. Ad Elohim yavadar shneim. Harekan shneim, 2 judges. Asher yashir Elohim. Harekan shlosha divrei Rabbi Yosher. Rabbi Yosher says that's your source. That's how you need 3 judges. 3 judges. Listen carefully. 3 judges because it says 3 times Elohim. Rabbi Yonason Omer, no. Rishon, the first time it says in the first pasuk where it says Elohim, Tchilanam, that's telling us the basic idea. You need a judge. How do you know you need a judge? Maybe just fight it out. That's telling you that you have to get it. Not only you need a judge, but you need a proper judge, a judge who's like Elohim, a judge who knows his stuff, a judge who is a mumcha. That's what we mentioned yesterday. When you mentioned yesterday Elohim, that's because there we were talking about getting a good judge. That's the idea that we mentioned on base. V'nikra b'ayis Elohim. That's what we say. Because it says that pasuk that we just quoted now, the first pasuk. So Rabbi Yonason says the first pasuk you can't count towards the number of judges. The first pasuk is to tell you that you need a good judge. You can't just take anybody off the street. So you don't darshan the first time. When it says a pasuk says something several times, several times that's a drush, but not the first time. The first time just has the basic idea that you need a good judge, a proper judge, right? You can't learn that. So therefore, right? Also, but you need a mumcha. Elohim lashon godless for abundance, says Rashi in the third and fourth line from the top of the page. You can't count that for the count how many you need. It's come to tell you the basic idea that you need an expert judge, a judge that's been appointed and been certified as an expert. So you can't dash the first. You have dash chilos. Ella. So what do you have left? You have two Elohims, right? The first one is just to tell you that you need a good judge. So what do you have to Ella ad Olim Yavod Vashem? The second time that it says Elohim, that's Harei Kanecha. That's the first judge. Asher Shin Elohim Harei Kanecha. So you only have two psukim. 2 words to tell me you need 2 judges. How do you know you need 3? Ein bes and shakel. We have a call. You can't have an odd number of judges, right? You can't have an even number of judges, rather. Ein bes and shakel. You can't have an even number. You must have an uneven number so that you can have a judge, because you have to go according to the majority. If you have an even number of judges, you might get a hung jury, like a hung jury. You know, it's they can't decide. It's even. You might have an even amount. You can't decide it. So Rabbi Yoshia says, you need 3 because it says Elohim 3 times. Rabbi Yonasan says, no, you can't count the first one. The first one's just telling me you need a good judge. So you count only number 2 and number 3. So you have 2 judges. But you can't have an even amount. You have to have an uneven amount. So therefore, that's how you get 3. So is that the machlokas here? L'chor Rabbi Yoshia says he darshan even the first Elohim. That's number 1, number 2, number 3. Name of darshan chilas kamifli es machlokas the marsa of darshan chilas. Rabbi Yoshia parent says you can even darshan the first time it says. The first time it says judge, you can count that as number 1. Then you have number 2 and number 3. Umarsa over ein darshan chilas. And Rabbi Yonasan says you don't darshan chilas. And generally, the idea is the first time something is mentioned, you can't make a special drasha to tell you the basic idea. So it's more low. Everybody agrees that you don't darshan the first time. Even Rabbi Yoshia, who says you count the first Elohim for one judge, judge number 1, judge number 2, judge number 3, even though he says that you count the first one, it's not because he darshans it, right? Lo dekol yam ein darshan chilas. Rabbi Yoshia says, so why does he darshan? Why does he darshan Elohim? Because it could have just said shofet. Imkei nema the pasuk should say v'nikra bais ela shofet. If you just want to tell me you need a good judge, just say v'nikra bais ela shofet. Why does he at lashon of Elohim? My Elohim Shema Minol Minyan has come to teach me. Not only do you need a judge, but you need. He's counted as the first of 3 judges, and you have 3 judges. Rabbi Yonasan. So what does Rabbi Yonasan say? Why doesn't he say? According to Rabbi Yonasan, that he doesn't count the first one because the first one is the basic idea. Why does it say shofet? Rabbi Yonasan listed down. It's just a general lashon. Like people say, mandis leidin. If you have a case, if you have a litigation, likr v'gabi daina, go to a good judge. A shofet could be anybody, could be a judge, but go to Elohim, go to a really proper judge. Okay, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yoshia Lesley Bezin Nota. I understand here. Rabbi Yonasan says, how do you know you need 3? Because really a psukim telling you 2, and you can't have an even amount, so you have to have a third one. So why does Rabbi Yoshia need Rabbi Yoshia apparently doesn't hold to that. He says you could have any amount, odd or even. Why do you have 3 here? Because I got 3 words, Elohim. 3 times it says Elohim. So the Gemara now says, Rabbi Yoshia Leslie Besin Nota doesn't hold to this concept that you have a Besin that can be inclined, meaning that you need an uneven number of judges. Because he says, what do you need 3 for? Because it says 3 times Elohim. If it would say 2 times Elohim only, then you'd only have 2 judges. That would be good too. Doesn't he hold that you have to have an uneven amount? In other words, that you always add on, if you have an even amount of judges, you add on a third. By Tanya Reb Lezer Benosh Reb Yosei Glili Omer, says the name of Yosei, the son of Yosei Glili says, Matam Lintos. Why does Pasuk say you incline it? Achri Rab Lahatos. You go according to majority. The Torah said, always make a bezin which has an uneven amount of judges. So doesn't Rabbi Yoshia hold to that? In other words, Rabbi Yoshia, the fact that he has to darshan all 3 Elohims tells you that he can't darshan 2 Elohims and then say, well, you need an uneven amount, so you add on a third. Mishmashma, he holds you need 3 judges based on the pasuk of 3 judges. Doesn't he hold of this drasha that you have to have an uneven amount? So the Gemara says, no, Rabbi Yoshia Savak Rabbi Yehuda. He holds like Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah says, how many people are in the Sanhedrin Agadol in Yerushalayim? 71. Rabbi Yehuda says 70. Says Esfali Shivamish. Moshe said, gather for me 70 people. Darshans it straight. He doesn't count Moshe. So therefore, you could say Rabbi Yoshi also is like a 70 is an even amount. You could have a hung court of 35 and 35. He says, so like Rabbi Yehuda, Damar Shivim. That's not, our Mishnah just said, Sanhedrin G'dol says Shevel Shivim Echad. That was the Tanakh. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shivim. Shivim, it says 70. So if 70, that's all you need is 70. So Rabbi Yehuda holds, in other words, doesn't everybody hold that you have to have an uneven amount of judges? No, Rabbi Yehuda on Mishnah says you can have an even amount, like in the Sanhedrin Shivim. So maybe Rabbi Yosha will also hold like him. You can have an even amount. The only reason why you need 3 is because it says Elohim 3 times. Gemara says no, can't learn from Rabbi Yehuda. Emer there's Shams Rabbi Yehuda b'Sanhedrin G'dola. The reason the only place Rabbi Yehuda says that you can have an even amount is in the Sanhedrin Gaon Yerushalayim, the Chsivi Kra, because the pasuk says Esfali Shivamish. Pasuk says befavor she needs 70. 70 is the court. B'Shar Beitin and Mishamasle. He doesn't necessarily say it by other bezins. Bezin of 23, a bezin that can judge a capital case, like we learned yesterday. Capital case for humans and animals, you need a court of 23, or a court of 3, a small court that can judge money matters. Would he also say there you can have an even amount? Would he say that? Maybe you'll say Rabbi Yehuda holds that not only can you have an even amount by the Seven Gadol, but you could even have by a smaller court. But we didn't learn that way in the Mishnah. But Tanan, our Mishnah said, this is the same Mishnah we saw yesterday, the first Mishnah. Smichas Kanim, when the Kanim lay their hands on the Parah Davashal Tzibur, called the Parah Eda, that's Smichas Kanim Varifas Egla, and when you do the Egla Rufa, right, when somebody is found dead near a city, you take the elders from that city, you have to come and do it. Bishlosha, says the Tanakama, right? Just like a money matter, Smichas Kanim and Arifas Egla also down to 3. Divrei Reb Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, B'chamisha, you need 5. Why do you need 5? Our Mishnah just said, our Mishnah didn't give us a reason. Rabbi Yehuda says you need 5. Varmina my time. In the Gemara, we're going to see later on, it says, what's the reason Rabbi Yehuda says my time? Why does Rabbi Yehuda say you need 5? He says, v'samchu, that's plural, that's 2. Samchu means, well, not samach, singular, but plural, that's 2. Ziknei is also plural, and ziknei is also like a dayan, says Rashi. Rashi says, smichas keinim al rosh hapar, ve'im bes shakol, says it here somewhere. I can't find it now. Where is it? In one place he says ziknei. Maybe the Rashi is misplaced. Yeah, he says it somewhere. Ziknei refers to elders who are judges. Zikanim are like judges. So therefore, you have 2 plus 2. Samchu is 2. Ziknei is 2. Ein bezin shakel mosifim le'imod echad. Since you can't have an even amount of judges in a court, you have to have 5. You can't have 4. Harei kan hey. So what do you see? That Rabbi Yehuda and Mishnah says you need 5, not because the pasuk says 5. It's because the pasuk says 4. Samchu is 2, Ziknei is 2, that's 4, and you can't have Bezat Shakal. So what do you see? Even Rabbi Yehuda, who says by the Senhedrin Gadol Yerushalayim, that can have an even amount 70, but when it comes to smaller courts, you have to have an uneven amount. So how could Rabbi Yoshia apparently disregard this idea of having an uneven amount? He says you don't care about an uneven amount. If he would say you could have an uneven amount, he would only need 2 psukim, Elohim twice, and then you have an uneven amount, like Rabbi Yonason says. The fact that he says you have to have 3 psukim, 3 Elohims, to tell him you need a quarter, 3 smashma, he doesn't hold of that concept that you have to have an uneven amount. And you can't say he goes like Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda might only say that by a bezin gadol, because it says the pasuk esfali shivamish, the pasuk says befavor 70. But in other cases, you see that he holds you do need enough an amount. The answer is Rabbi Yoshi. Rabbi Yoshi, adif from Rabbi Yehuda. He holds like Rabbi Yehuda that you can have an even amount, like in the case of the Senhedrin Gadol, but he goes even further. He Rabbi Yehuda b'Senhedrin Gadol Yehuda Leslie. Rabbi Yehuda only holds in the Senhedrin Gadol. You don't need an uneven amount. You can have an even amount. B'Shar Beidina Islay, but he holds by other peasants. You do need an uneven amount. Rabbi Yoshi B'Shar Beidina Anami Leslie. Rabbi Yoshi holds even by other peasants. You don't need an uneven amount. You could have an even amount. The only reason that you have 3 over here is because it says Olim 3 times. So if that's the case, it's the Gemara of Elohai Lintos Mayavadle. So what does he do with Lintos? No, it says Adam. Al Pishnaim or Shlosha Adam. When it comes to witnesses, you need 2 or 3. The Gemara says, so if you have 2, what do you need 3 for? What does it say 3? Tell me, just like if 2 if 1 is no good, the whole thing is no good. If you had three witnesses came along and one was found to be no good, that's also no good. Machlokas, we'll see that in the Gemara Makkas. It's going to refer. We'll see it in Sanhedrin also, but the source is in Makkas also. Daf Beis Daf Gimel over there talking about 2 or 3. Doesn't say about judges. So here we're saying that Rabbi Yoshi apparently holds. He doesn't hold of this business that you have to have an uneven amount. So what does he do with this business of the pasuk says the Gemara says lintos may. What does he do with lintos? It says lintos acharav. You have to follow the majority. You have to follow the majority. That means that you have to have an uneven amount. And if it's an even amount, you may not have a majority. It might be even Steven. So what does he do with this pasuk? Lintos may. Oh, when it comes to capital cases, he says lintos acharav lahatos. By a capital case, if he's found innocent by 1, as we had yesterday, then he's cleared. It says, right? We had that yesterday. But what does it say when it says that you shouldn't go after one? You shouldn't go after a majority for Rabbim. The pasuk says in the Chumash in the Mishnah, "Lo siachar Rabbim l'roos." That means for finding him guilty, you shouldn't go by a majority of 1. But for finding him innocent, you can use a majority of 1. For finding him guilty, you have to have a majority of 2. So he says, by din nefashos, you need a majority. So when it comes to a capital case, then he would agree that you need you can't have a peasant shakel like we saw in the Mishnah. Why is a court of 23 in the Mishnah by a capital case? Because we say you need 10 prosecutors, you can have 10 prosecutors, 10 defenders, and then you have to have a majority of 2 for finding him guilty, and that would be 22, and you can't have an even amount, so you add on 1, you get 23. Even Rabbi Yoshi rather would hold of that. Okay, you don't need a majority. You don't need a majority of you don't have to go by majority, but rather you just go by the pas. Pas says you have 3 judges. Wait a minute. If that's the case, how does he know that you can use a majority at all? Maybe when it says 3 judges, it has to be unanimous, right? There are cases in common law also where unless you have a unanimous decision, it's not valid, right? If 2 people say innocent, and one says he's guilty, zakai, you go with the majority. 2. 2 people say he's guilty, and one says innocent. You go with the majority. Name Rabbi Yoshia. Chaz doesn't go like Rabbi Yoshia. Why? Because Rabbi Yoshia says he doesn't have apparently he does. The idea of you go according to the majority is by din and nefashos. They say you go according to by din and nefashos. But by money matters or things anything you need a court of 3, maybe it has to be unanimous. Maybe he doesn't hold of that. So I feel Rabbi Yoshia could even go like Rabbi Yoshia. He also says you go with the majority. Ma'asilo b'kavachomer. He'll learn it from a kavachomer. Be din and nefashos. Why? Umatin in the fashas to chamir, umatin in fashas which are more stringent. You can kill somebody. You can go according to the majority. You don't need unanimity. And certainly money matters, which are less stringent. Certainly you can go according to the majority. So therefore, he doesn't necessarily hold of the concept of bezdin shakel, except by that you can't have a bezdin shakel except by din and fashos. Because the lintos acharab lahatos that you have to make sure you have an uneven amount, but still, in other words, the reason he says you need a 3-person judge is not because you need an odd amount. Yes, if it turns out it's if it's what we call a split decision, right? 2 to 1, yeah, you go according to the majority, because if you go by the majority by din and fashos, certainly by din and mamonos. But the reason is a court of 3 is not because you need an uneven amount. Technically. Even if you had an even amount, that would be a good court too, were it not for the psukim of the 3 times that it says Elohim. It says, let me tell me you need a court of 3. You still go according to the majority, kal v'chomer from the case of there. But the idea of that you can't have a bezdin shakel and you have to add on 1 more, that's only by din and nefashos, not by din and mamonos according to Rabbi Yoshia. Tan Rabbana, din and mamonos b'shlosha. We're at the wide lines now. Money matters are handled with a court of 3. According to Yosha, based on Elohim, according to Rav Yonasan, 2 Elohims plus ein bezdin shakel. So Dina Mam Sosha. Rebbe Omer, listen to this. Rebbe says b'chamisha. You need 5. You know, it's not 5 only like Rabbi Yehuda said in the case of smichas, skenim harufa, because it says for samchu and ziknei, and not because it says that, right? Not because of that, but rather because rather because I'm still looking for that Rashi where he says it's somewhere here on the page. It's frustrating. I can't find the Rashi, but somewhere he says that Dayanim are that when it says as Zikne refers to Shoftim, to
It's on
proper
the
judge.
same line as Rabbi Yehuda, Taisus, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shivim, straight across.
Where is it?
You see where the different maskell of Taisus, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shivim, straight across.
Rabbi Yehuda in the Gemara where it says Rabbi Yehuda Meshivim.
No, in the Taisus, look at Taisus.
Oh, the Tosas Rabbi Yehuda Meshivim, right,
See
right.
Maskell, say straight across.
Oh, Stam's Canaan best din and mashma. Right. Okay. Right. It's not in the. I was looking for the Rashi that starts with Canaan. It's ain't best and shakel. Stam's Canaan based in a mashma. Very good. Shkoyach Rami. Okay. So you see here that that this Zikne means two. Zikne means two. Canaan are Dayanim. And Samchu. It says the Samchu Shnaim. The Smicha is talking about Canaan also judges. That's two, and Zikne is also Dayanim, so he has four. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. So therefore, and Bez and Shakel, so you have five. But here Rabbi says you always need a minimum of five. Rabbi Yehuda was only talking about the case of Smichas Kanim and Egla Rufa in our Mishnah. You need five because the pasuk indicates four, and you add one more for five. Rabbi says you always need a minimum of five. Rabbi Yom B'chamisha, K'dei sheyigmar adin b'shlosha. Listen to this. It sounds like, why do you need five? So that in case you have a split decision, you'll have at least three, right? You'll have at least three. So you at least have a majority. In other words, why do you have five? So you could have a majority of 3-2. Otherwise, if you only had four, you might have a split decision and may not be able to decide it. So very good. Since I explained it this way, you understood the next kasha. If the reason is you need five so that you'll always have a majority, right? If you have three, you also can have a majority of 2-1. It doesn't mean that. In other words, he's saying no. Apparently, we're explaining Rebbe to mean this. Rebbe says you need five. Why? He says so that the verdict will be done with three, meaning that he holds, and when the pasuk indicates you need three, Elohim, 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 or Rabbi Yonasan, however you learn that, Rabbi Yonasan's Russia, that it's 2 plus 8 bez and shakel. The three is you need a verdict of three in unison. In other words, the three have to say the same thing. So therefore, he says if you had a court of three, this is apparently Nahavmina. If you had a court of three, you might have a 2-1. He says, no, you need three judges giving you the same verdict in order for that to be a proper verdict. When he says three means you need three on the same side. That's apparently what he means. There's no hachikamer. They should mardin b'shlosha almak suffer. He must hold. Rebbe must hold. Plus, when the pasuk says you need three judges, Elohim, Elohim, the gemardin eksiv. We're talking about the gemardin. You have to have three on the same side. That's why you need five. If you have five, you'll for sure have to have at least three. You might have four. You might have five on one side, but at least you'll have three on one side. That's why. Megadafa Ravu was indignant, and he disputed him indignantly. He says, "What do you mean? You're saying when it says three, mean you three who say the same opinion in the verdict? So if that's the case, El Me'ata Sanhedrin Gedola. When the pasuk says by Sanhedrin Gadol, you need 71, right? You learn out 71 plus Moshe. Does that mean you need 71 on the same side? That would mean that you would need a court of how many to make sure? 141 to make sure that there's at least 71 on the same side, right? We assume that there's only two sides to every issue, not three. So you'd have 71 on the same side in the verdict. But they Sanhedrin, which is what? A court of 23. Shouldn't need 23. How many should you need? 45. If you have a court of 45, you'll for sure have 23 on one side. Because as you're saying, the number that the pasuk requires, whether it's 3 or 23 or 71, have to be on the side of the verdict, not that you sit in court. And obviously you're not saying that because the large court is only 71, not 141. And the smallest Sanhedrin is 23, not 45. Ella, no, can't mean that. Ella esfali shivamish. When the pasuk says gather from me 70 people or 71, according to Tanakama, when they gather together to sit in judgment, then you need shivim. When it says V'shaftu Eida V'tzilo Eida, how do you know you need 23? It says they should judge them, meaning that you could have 10 prosecutors V'tzilo Eida and 10 defenders, and you have to have that possibility. Nami Mishas Shvita, Mishas Shvita. Shvita Sa'eda, from the time that they judge it, that the assembly sits down to judge it. In other words, obviously you add 3 more because 2 for the majority if it's guilty, plus 1 because you can't have peasant chuckle, even according to Rav Yoshia, we said that by capital cases, you can't have an even amount. But the point is though that the source is telling me 70 or 23 is when they sit down in judgment, not that many have to be on the side of the verdict. You have to have 3 from the 3 elements says, and when they sit down, they have to have a court of 3. Not that you have to have a 3 on the same side of the verdict. Ella, so what does Rebbe mean? When Rebbe says you need a minimum of 5, where does he get that from? It says Elohim 3 times, right? According to Yosan, 2 times plus the and Bezin Shoko. Ella, you want Rebbe's reasons? Listen carefully. Asher Yashion Elohim Trey. Remember, the 3 psukim were V'nikra Bayis Elohim, Ad Elohim Yavlo Shneim. Asher Yashion Elohim. Yashion is plural. Asher Yashion, plural. That Elohim is plural. The last one is plural. That means 2 judges. Okay. Look inside. 3 lines from the bottom page of the Gemara. Elohim Tam Rebbe. Asher Yashion Elohim Trey. Trey. That's 2. So Nemelim Lamata, the last one, the bottom one that we just said Yashun is 2, but Nemelim Lamata says Elohim above that, right above that. And there's the second one in the same pasuk. The same pasuk says, Ad Elohim Yavo Dav Shneim, Asher Yashir Elohim. So it says Elohim twice in this pasuk. The last one is double because the Yashiun is plural. Yashiun is plural. That's 2. So the Elohim above is also plural. So it's 2 plus 2 is 4, right? Again, so you got 4. Ain't Bezin Shako. You can't have an even amount. That's how you get 5. So okay, so that's Rebbe's Russia. Okay, so why does the Tanakhama disagree with him? Why does he say 3? V'Rabbanan Yashiun Ksiv. Yashiun Ksiv. It says Yashi. We pronounce it as Yashiun, but it's written Yashion. Yashion 1. Okay, Yashion is 1. Therefore, do you look at the way it's written, which is written as if it's 1 judge, or do you look at it 2? Or do you look at it as 2? Okay, Rebbe says you look at it the way it's pronounced. It's pronounced Yashiun double. So that's 2. Yashion is 1. That's the Rabbanan. Okay, so that's the machlokas over here. The Rabbanan say, yes, it says Yashiun as in plural 2, but it's written as 1. That's what we call yesh aim lemasoris. The way it's written, the way it's written with Rashi says further down on the page, a little bit below halfway page on this stuff on Gimel and Aleph, shenimsrek sivaso lekosvo chasera. It was given to Moshe Rabbeinu from Hashem that it was written down, that to be written down without the extra vav in there between the ayin and the nun sofiz. So that's the machlokas over here. Amar Rav Yitzchak, Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yochanan. Now he says, listen, Rebbe who just darshaned, he says, no, you look at the way it's pronounced. That's yesh em lemikra, the way it's pronounced. Rashi at the top of the page, yesh em lemikra. Basar kriya azlina, you go according to the way it's read, the way it's vocalized. Azlina dihi ikar. The main thing is the way it's pronounced. So he says, listen, Rebbe who just said this, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz who says something else. So Beis Shammai, for Reb Shimon, for Rabbi Akiva, these 5 different shitas, these 5 different tanoim, kulu sfiru, they all hold yesh em lemikra. That when there's a dispute, there's a difference between the way it's written and the way it's pronounced, you look at the way it's pronounced. Rebbe Haramah, Rebbe just said it because he says, since you say Yashiun, that's 2, not 1. Yashiun. The way it's written is Yashion is 1 person, 1 judge. The way it's written, the way it's pronounced is 2. Oh, if it's 2, if the last Elohim is 2, the one before that is also 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. Ein Bezin Shaka, that's how he gets 5. So Rebbe says the minimum court, you can't have a court of 3 at all. He says you always need 5. Why? Because he goes Yesh Aim Lemikra. So Rebbe holds the Yeshua Mikra. Where do we have the other 4 rabbis also hold the Yeshua Mikra? We'll have this from the next case. We'll see one of them now. Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, the Tanya, Shal Talmidim es Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz. We've learned many times when a woman gives birth to a boy, she's tummy for 7 days. The pasuk says beginning with Tasriya, right? And then she's tummy for 7 days, and then she has 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks of 14 days in which it's Yomei Tahara. Even down that she sees there is Tahar. If she gives birth to a girl, she's tummy for 14 days, right? Tummy for 14 days. And what did I just say? 7. I said it wrong. No, I said it wrong. Now listen to me. 7 days she's tummy. 7 days is tummy by a boy, and then followed by 33 days of Yomei Tara, total of 40 days. 7 days she's tummy, and then for the next 33 days, even if she sees dam, it's tar. By a girl is tummy for, if you give birth to a girl, she's tummy for 14 days, followed by 66 days of Tahara, right? Right. Now, it says over here, right? So now we say like this. Rabbi Yehuda says, listen, Ekrani Shivim. The pasuk says there, it doesn't say Shivu Ayim, right? It says is v'tamei, right? It says there, it says there she's tamei for 2 weeks, shvuayim, right? Shvuayim, 2 weeks, that's 14 days. But maybe she's tamei for 70 days, right? Shivim, right? Maybe he's read it shivim. Ekrani shivim. Maybe she should be tamei because it doesn't say shivuayim with 2 yuds in there. It just says shiv. It's pronounced shivuayim, but it's written as shivim. So maybe it should be shivim. Maybe she should be tamei for 70 days, right? Shivim, she should be tummy for 70 days. That's what he said. Why not? So then he said to them, no, it can't be. Why? Because by giving birth to a male, the pasuk says she's tamei, followed by Yomei Tara. What were again, let's review that because I said it wrong before. 7 days of Tumah, followed by 33 days of Tahara. And Ben Akeva also says that. Mak Shatir Bezachar, Ben Akeva, Mak Shatir Bezachar, Ben Akeva Kiflaim. Just like when she's tahor for a zachar, how many days is she tahor for a zachar? 33 days. And how many days is she tahor for a girl? 66 days. So it's just like 66 days is double of 33, right? Mak Shatir Bezachar, Ben Akeva Kiflaim is double that. Av Kshatim Bezachar, when you tamei by a zachar, how many days is she tamei for a zachar? 7. Ben Akeva also kiflayim. Therefore, when it says shin bet ayin yud mem, it cannot be 70. It's got to be shivuayim. It's got to be 7 because just like the meitara of a girl are double those of the meitara of a boy, because it says 33 days by a boy and 66 days by a girl. So the same thing for the tumah. The tumah also, the girl is double that of the boy. The boy is 7, so that's fine. Therefore, we know that when it says, even though the word says shivim, it could be read as shivim. It must be read as shivuayim. Only she's tummy for 14 days, not 70 days. After they went out, so Yehuda ben Doritz was darshing that. He says maybe it's shivim, can't be, because just like Yomei Tara are double that of the boy, the same thing Yomei Tumah also of the girl is double that of the boy. So instead of 7, it's 14. That's how we know that you read a shvuayim. After they went out, he ran after them. He ran after them and said, no. You don't need this drasha of since the Yomei Tara is double that of the boy, the Yomei Tumah is also double that. Rather, shivuayim karinan. The fact is, we read it shivuayim. The fact that's the Masorah, even though Yesh Masorah is referring to writing, but the Masorah says that's how we read it from time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Somebody reads it. If a kid goes up and lanes it, the Tamei Shivim, he's reading it wrong. We pronounce it as Shivuayim, Shivim Karinan, the Yesh Aim Lamikra. And what's key is what the deciding factor is the way it's read. The way it's read is Shivuayim, even though it's written as Shivim. Sometimes, right? So that's a machlokas over here. Is Yesh Aim Lamikra or Yesh Lam Soros? Is the key the way it's written, or the key is the way it is read? Now, in our Gemara, when we talk about the judges, the Tanakama holds obviously Yesh Aim L'Masoras, Rabbanan Yashiyank, the way it's written, not the way it's read. Rebbe holds it's the way it's pronounced, the way it's vocalized, the way it's pronounced. And that's what, so Rebbe holds of that. And now we see this Reb Yehuda ben Roetz also says that, because he says, how do you know that when a pasuk says by the girl giving birth to a girl, v'tamei shivuayim, even though it could be read as shivim, but it's pronounced shivuayim. Therefore, you go by the way it's pronounced, not the way it's written. It's written as shivuim, shivim. It's written as shivuim, shin bet ayin yud mem. That could be read. It could be read as shivim. That's the way it's written, but it's pronounced shivuayim. So the key is the way it's pronounced. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz also holds like Rebbe in this aspect. Not necessarily that they'll agree in every case, but they both agree that Yeshem Lemikra, you go according to the way it's pronounced, not the way it's written. And then the tomorrow's Gemara is going to go on over here to prove how Beis Shammai And Rav Shimon and Rav Akiva also hold this idea that when there's a difference between the way it's written and the way it's pronounced, you go according to the way that it is pronounced. That'll be on the podcast, Mirza on Shabbos as Daf. And on Sunday morning, we'll pick it up in Mirza Hashem Daf Hey from Iboilu, the fourth line on Daf Hey Amar Aleph. Shabbat Shalom Lekulam.
Shabbat Shalom. Regards.